Welcome to the first part of the Toon Under Pod's two-part special with Western Sydney Wanderers captain Rhys Williams. We talked to Rhys about his early years playing football in Perth, his time at Middlesbrough, and his international career with Wales and then the Socceroos. Hello and welcome to the Toon Under Pod, the original dedicated Newcastle United podcast in the Southern Hemisphere. It doesn't take much to get Newcastle fans excited these days. Maybe one win in 15 games will do it, or the windows being cleaned at the stadium. That was a big one. We've all been on a bit of a high this week after the Burnley game, after we finally won a game. So today, myself, Bobby and Dimitri are even more excited because we've got our first podcast guest. This is a big deal. So this guest has 14 caps for the Socceroos. He has 10 caps and 1 goal for the Wales under-21 team. And he's got a varied career spanning 3 continents. He started his professional career in Middlesbrough, but we'll try not to hold that against him too much. He's playing now in Australia's professional football league, the A-League, and we're delighted to welcome the current captain of Western Sydney Wanderers, Rhys Williams, to the Toon Under Pod.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. I can't believe I'm on a Newcastle pod. That's surprising me.
I know. I don't think there's any Borough pods in Australia, so this is the closest you'll get.
Yeah, you must be desperate for talking to a smoggy,
eh? So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you a bit about how a young man from Perth, Western Australia, or Joondalup to be more specific, ends up playing football on Teesside in the frozen north of England. And also just have a chat about professional football in Australia in general. We've had a few questions come to the pod about that. And I know that Bobby and Dimmy have their views about that. So for the purposes of this pod, football is the one played with the round ball. Sometimes there's a bit of confusion in Australia about what football is, but yeah, we're not going to call it soccer here, we'll call it football. So let's start at the beginning, Rhys. So I'm guessing when you were a kid, there was probably no shortage of sports to play in school. This is a pretty sport-crazy country. So my question to begin with is, what would you say the main sport in Western Australia is? Because it varies from state to state. How was it that you ended up playing football, and how long did it take for you to realise you were actually pretty good and might be able to make a living out of the sport?
It's a difficult one, in WA. I think a lot of it's based around AFL with footy. And then football comes in second, although there's more players that play it. It's just not as big, with two great AFL teams who sell out stadiums, 50, 60,000 each week. So it's hard to battle with them. And with all due respect, they're doing really well and staying strong for a lot of years. But I grew up with a football background anyway. My dad played for QPR, England schoolboys. My mother played for the state, for the state team as well. So I think my granddad played as well. So I didn't have much choice, to be honest. I always had football goals in the back. So it's easier to fit football goals than AFL posts in the back garden. So I think that was a bit easier as well. At school as well, it's a bit of both. I think it's more football because it's a bit safer for kids to do at school than AFL, So I found my way into the game through family, to be honest. A lot of my friends were playing it as well, and I don't think I was too bad as a kid as well. So I just kept going and going, playing for the school. And it's a weird story because when I did hit 13, 14, I considered quitting and trying AFL. And I was a surfer at the time, bodyboarder. I used to love that. So as you do, growing up in Australia. So I was on the verge of giving it up, and I gave it not one last season, but one season to see if I could enjoy it and love it again. And I did. And that was a year that I played at the highest level I could at 14, 15. And from there, at the time, my club Joondalup had a thing where if you're doing well, then there was one kid a year that they would send to England for trials. Okay. And I was that lucky kid one year. And I went to 5 clubs, Villa, Middlesbrough, Portsmouth, Leicester and West Brom. 2 teams offered me a deal, which was Villa and Middlesbrough, and one team said they couldn't compete with the others, so they just left me to it. So, which was great, At the time, they still are big clubs, but they were big clubs back then, and Middlesbrough always had that edge of pushing players through, and their training ground was completed, whereas Villas was still in the old one and completed it a few years later. So my decision was based on the training ground, the players that came through, and also the Aussie influence at Middlesbrough. At the time, Viduka was there, Schwarzer was there, Brad Jones was there, Luke Wiltshire used to play there, Paul Ocon, to name a few, you know. So I felt like that was my way forward and signed on the dotted line and ended up having a career there for 12, 13 years. So
that was, what year was that? That'll have been mid-2000s?
2004, I think. Yeah, it rings a bell around that time. I'm not too sure now. I'm getting a bit older now, so you forget a few things, don't you, fellas?
Your memory's going.
So, yeah, it was a long career, and I've only been away from the club now. I think this is my 6th year away, so I still like to check on him, and I've got a few friends there. Even though I had a pretty checkered injury past there, and so I'm probably better friends with the physios and the players, so which speaks a lot. So now I'm here and I love it here, and in between Saudi Arabia was there and Australia again. So I'm back home now and enjoying it.
I was actually going to ask about that Aussie link at Middlesbrough as well. Is that something that was done on purpose, or I was wondering if they had scouting over here or anything, or whether it just happened that way?
Well, it was funny actually because Kenny Lowe, I think, was the way in. He's he's a Geordie as well, isn't he? But he had good contacts around Middlesbrough, and I think that was my way in actually. So it was a strange one that it came back around, and I played under him at Perth Glory as well. So no, I don't think there was anything like that. I think it was just, I don't know, certain nationalities get attracted to certain places, and that was certainly one of them.
So 2004, was that Steve McLaren was the first team manager at that point?
Yeah, he was a gaffer. Yeah, in the 2nd or 3rd year I was there. We were in the UEFA Cup final as well, which was a brilliant experience to go. And watch that. Although the day didn't turn out great, I think the team got beat 3-0, maybe even 4.
I think it was 4.
4, yeah.
4, I think. So for them to be at that stage was unbelievable, and to see it as a kid, it just drove you on.
Steve McLaren's got a different bit of a different reputation among Newcastle fans. He didn't have a great time with us, but I think there's absolutely no doubt in the job he did at Middlesbrough. He was fantastic, you know. And then fair play to him, he went off to the Netherlands after that and won the league there. So he was clearly a good coach, and he was very well respected at that time after working for Man United. Did you actually play under him in the first team then, Rhys, or was he gone by the time he broke into the first team?
Yeah, I never played under him. I was trained with him fairly regular, but he wasn't there that long before I left. And then after that came in was Southgate. I'm pretty sure Southgate took over. And that's who I got my debut under. So it was good to first of all train alongside him, and then to be coached by him as well and be given my debut by him. It was brilliant.
Gareth Southgate, is he as he appears? Because he just seems like a nice guy, but he was obviously a very experienced player, and he seems to have that bit of steel about him as well. Did you ever see what he would go on to achieve when you knew him and you were working with him? He's been fantastic for England, more in terms of his personality and the culture he's set around the national team. Maybe, and obviously results have been good on the pitch as well. But did you kind of envisage that for him when you knew him? Yeah,
of course. You know what type of player he was. You know, he gave everything on the pitch. He was a leader, and he's taken that into the management side of him. I think it was pretty. It was pretty sad the way he left Middlesbrough at the time. I know we got relegated his first year, but in the Championship, I think we'll sit in 3rd or 4th after a few games. And I think it was the fact that the crowds were down that went against him. So, but you see, you know, it's no coincidence that he's gone on to be a well-respected name in the game on the other side. You know, not only a player but a manager. And you see how well he's doing, how respected he is, and. He's a man manager, he's a leader, and you want to join him, you know, you want to play for him, and you want to fight, you want to go through brick for walls for him. So it's no surprise where he is. Lovely, lovely, lovely man. You know, if I bumped into him now, I'm sure he'll remember the days that I played under him. You know, he's one of them that will always give you the time of day.
It's really impressive what he's done with England. Like I was saying, it's kind of the culture he's set, and I think he understands that PR part of that job as well. So that's extremely important, almost as important as the getting the tactics right on the pitch and everything. And he's just done that so well. So it's good to hear your memories sort of resonate with that as well.
Yeah, brilliant man manager, you know, and it's showing now. You know, I haven't heard of anyone speak a bad word about him, and nor should they. You know, it just speaks volumes of the man he is.
I was going to ask, what were your main memorable experiences playing for Middlesbrough then?
My debut was always great. Yeovil in the cup it was. The Premier League days, sitting on the bench at Anfield was always nice. And then you got the cup fixtures, you know, when you got to play against the big sides, well, was always great. But also being named captain of that, it's a big club, you know, being named captain at, I think it was 25, 26 maybe. And to be named captain at that age, I probably didn't appreciate it as much as I would now, you know. I look back now and I think what an honour it was. I knew it was an honour at the time, but you can reflect on that once it's gone. And it's a shame that that's happened, but it was unbelievable, you know, and I'm still known as previous Middlesbrough captain, which is nice, you know, at such a young age. So, yeah, that's definitely probably one of the highlights. Yeah, it was a long time there, you know. There's a lot of memories, and the family I live with from the start as well have always got a place in my heart, and it's unbelievable. Yeah. But the funny thing is, I met a Geordie girl at school in Perth, and then took her back to Middlesbrough. So, there's a story for you as well. So,
but her dad's a Mackem, isn't he? That's right.
Yeah, and there's the other side of it as well. So you've got all three northeast sides. So it's not really a good mix there. We all get along, which is all right.
Family dinners at Christmas time would be fun then, wouldn't it?
Oh, they all support Australian teams now, so it's all right now.
I was going to say, your two kids will be confused. They won't know who to support or what to do.
No, well, one was born. One she is a smoggy, and the other one's from Saudi Arabia. She doesn't know what's going on.
So, this is a Newcastle United podcast. Can you remember your times playing against Newcastle? You probably did that a couple of times.
Yeah, definitely. You know, the few times we did play at St. James's as well. And I've got Colaccini's shirt signed as well.
Nice.
So I swapped with Colaccini at the time, which is a nice one to have. He was good friends with Julio Arca, who was with us. Yeah. And Julio took it to him to get it signed for me. So that's a memory that I've got. And also now I still talk every now and then to Stevie Taylor.
Oh,
he was playing out. He was playing out here at Wellington. I've got messaged him the other day after his retirement, but he done well over here. I think he was in India for a bit as well, so he's ventured over here, and he was really successful.
Yeah, he was quite popular with the Phoenix, I believe.
Yeah, and also James Chuisi, my teammate now, played for years, and we actually played against each other for the youth team or reserves way back in the day, and now we're playing together again, and we're both 33, so it's been a long way in between, but we'll come back around again.
Football seems like quite a small world at the same time. Is it like that? Like you get to know people and you bump into each other again, and is that the way it goes?
Yeah, it's like you've never been away. You know, you can not speak to anyone or not see someone for 5 years, and then you bump into them. It's like nothing's changed.
Yeah.
But I think with football as well, when you've been in successful teams or you've won something with the team, it's always a little bit different, you know, and with Jimmy, I've been friends with him for years and years, and with James Chuisi, I've been friends with him for years and years, and then to win something at Victory as well with him was brilliant. So you always hold them probably a bit closer because of what you achieve together. But I'm not one to text every week. How are you? How you doing? You know, every couple of months, if I bump into you, nothing's changed. So that's how I like to do it.
You were actually linked with Newcastle around the early 2010s. I remember quite clearly. That must have been the time when you were at your peak for Middlesbrough. You were getting linked to a few Premier League clubs, I remember. Can you remember how close a move to Newcastle or to any other Premier League clubs was at that time?
Yeah, it was pretty close. You know, not the Newcastle one. I think the Newcastle one. I think me and my wife were sat on the couch watching Sky Sports News, and I've just done my Achilles and something popped up saying they've seen me at St. James's Park, and I'm sat on my couch watching it thinking, what is going on? So there was just fishing for stuff. But yeah, probably the closest to leaving was maybe had a few blocks moves to Swansea, Celtic, and a few to Owen Coyle. Owen Coyle tried to sign me at a few clubs, 3 clubs, I think. I don't know how close they got, but I always knew he was a fan because I played under him at Burnley. So I know he's actually told me he tried to sign me a couple of times, so I don't know how close they actually got, but a lot of the time they got turned down. You know, there was a time where I did say like, "What's going on?" And if bids are getting rejected, then I want to sign a new deal. I want you to show me how much you want me to stay, and they did exactly that, and that's when I became captain as well. So that was probably the time that all the interest was coming.
Do you regret not moving at the time, or do you think that chance to move up to the Premier League would have taken you even further, perhaps, in your career? What would you think in terms of looking back at it now, whether you sort of jumped at the move before staying at Borough?
Hindsight is a wonderful or horrible thing, isn't it? You just don't know. And, you know, I would never say I was desperate to leave or I should have left Middlesbrough, because it's disrespectful. And also I enjoyed every minute of that club and I gave my everything for that club. But yeah, who knows? Like I said, hindsight, you know, I think there was a time where even Liverpool and Everton were looking as well. And I think the boys used to take the piss out of me because I think I got linked to someone every window. So they used to think it was my agent doing it. So I don't know how much my agent had to do. I don't know how his mates were in the papers, but obviously you'd like to think who knows what could have happened. But my goal was to get Middlesbrough to the Premier League, and I couldn't achieve that at the time. So you just never know, you know. It's a tough question. It's an interesting one, actually. I don't know how to answer it.
I know that, and that's interesting because I know that Alan Shearer always says that he just never regrets signing for Newcastle, even though he didn't win anything. He could have gone to Man United. He would have won absolutely everything and made them even better. So I think his way of viewing it is just like, what's the point in regretting anything, you know? You make your decisions at the time and live by them, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And don't get me wrong, who knows what could have happened if I moved there, you know? You just don't know. The grass isn't always greener. And I was so happy and comfortable and enjoying my time at Middlesbrough that I didn't see it as a big problem. And I loved my time at Middlesbrough. So there's nothing. Yeah, to answer your question, no, I don't regret anything because I've had a pretty all right career in England. I'm happy. I can't wait for my son to realise his dad was actually okay, even though I'm still not. I'm not on his top 10 yet. So I'm working my way up.
Has he got videos not on at home, or you don't put your best highlights on YouTube or anything like that?
They're all in black and white, mate. So I don't know if you understand.
How did you find, Rhys? How did you find living and working in the northeast then? Because Middlesbrough and Teesside is a little bit different from Perth in Western Australia. Just a little bit.
But saying that, I didn't know any. I honestly didn't know any different because I left so young. My whole adult life was at Middlesbrough. Even still now, I've only had 1 year in Perth for Perth Glory since I was 15. So it was the last time I was home. Yeah, you go back on holidays here and there, but to live there, we stayed there for a year. That was the first time in our adult life, that we'd actually spent an extended time in Perth. So I didn't know the difference. So Teesside was my home. That's all I knew. It's what I grew up with. I knew the ins and outs of Teesside. When I went home to Perth, I didn't freaking know where my nana lived, you know. So, so it shows you I was there for a long time, and I really enjoyed it.
How often were you able to get back to Perth when you lived in Middlesbrough? Because obviously it's a 24-hour plus flight.
Yeah, when you're sort of a scholar, you know, early professional years, when you're young, they like to get you home for Christmas. I always got maybe 10 days, 2 weeks back home at Christmas. And then other than that, it was as soon as the season finished, you know, you're back home and then you fly back to England a day or two before the season started again. So my holiday was always coming home to Perth, even though it was winter, it's still hotter than Teesside. So that was always a walk around in shorts and t-shirt. Everyone was rugged up and stuff like that. So got home every now and then, and I had a lot of injuries when I was younger also, so that gave me a bit of time back home my earlier days. The older I got and with the injuries, couldn't really be bothered going home as much anymore, and we had our son in England as well, so we didn't really feel the need to go back straight away.
You've touched a bit on the injuries there. So how do you, as you get older, do you sort of just learn to deal with them differently? Because do you get down about them? Do you not get as upset the older you get, or how does it work? Because it's tough, like your whole career depends on staying fit, doesn't it? Really, It's not like other jobs.
So I think I got asked this the other day, and I said I think they asked me what's the proudest moment of my career. Probably my footballing career. The proudest moment is coming back for what I've dealt with and come back, and now I've went down to the bottom and I came all the way back up again, and also you have to look at it like this. There's plenty of people worse off. Just because I can't play football it does get you down, but you think about everyone else in the world, and it's not. It's not. You can't really sit around moping about it. At the end of the day, it's a sore foot, really. And some people don't have food, they don't have water, and I've got a sore foot. So that's the way I started to look at it. And now, even when people start getting injured and my friends get injured, I'll message them straight away and say, enjoy this time with family, because when you're injured, there's no pressure. There's no pressure on you to perform, no pressure on your diet, no pressure on, training. You don't have all these little things you need to stress about. So in a way, being injured, you have to enjoy that normal life for a bit. And that's one thing I'll say to long-term injuries, you just have to enjoy that time with your family, because once you come back, it's work mode back on, and everything has to be perfect to make sure you perform on a weekend.
So in terms of your international career, Rhys, so you played for Wales under 21s. I think Williams is a pretty Welsh surname, but you played and Rhys as well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But you played for the Australia senior team. Mm-hmm. So was there ever a point where you had to make a choice between, because you were eligible for England as well, I assume? So was there ever a point you had to make that choice between these three countries? Was it just dependent on the timing completely, or did you always want to represent Australia senior?
Well, this is a funny one as well. The first ones who actually showed interest in me were England. So my first year scholarship at Middlesbrough, I was doing really well, and I don't know if you know Dave Parnaby. His big name at Middlesbrough was a youth team coach there, and he approached me and said, "Look, I've put your name forward for England under 16, 17, whatever it was at the time." And I was like, wow, it's unbelievable. If you probably look at the players my age now that have played there, it was an amazing feeling. But that never eventuated. And so then Australia were a bit funny with picking players abroad. Obviously, they don't get to see you play, and the travel's a long way, and it didn't really need to be traveling away from a club for long periods of time when the Australian national team played outside of FIFA windows at the time. So Wales came in. Brian Flynn, really, really popular fella, approached me about the 21s and said, "We'd love to get you down." My granddad was Welsh, so we can get you in on them. So I went down, absolutely fell in love with it. I had a brilliant side: Bale, Ramsey, Wayne Hennessy, Joe Ledley was a little bit older. So we had some really positive names, and that was just when Aaron Ramsey was coming through as well. And it was a really enjoyable time, and we got all the way. We had a really successful tournament. I think not tournament, like qualifying period, and I absolutely loved it. It got to a point where I was doing well, and I sat on the bench for the Welsh national team, the first team in a friendly, and it was at that point when the national anthem came on, and I just thought, it's a funny feeling, I appreciate everything that they've done for me, giving me the chance and playing for them. But at the end of the day, I'm not Welsh. And I think that sort of sunk in when I hit the first team. Under 21s is fine. You're still a kid. You can still, just enjoy playing football internationally. But when it gets to the first team, it gets serious. And I got to that point when the national anthem came on and sat on the bench. And luckily that day, unluckily, I didn't get on that day. And after that, that's when I had a chat with, I think, my family and my agent. I said, look, it felt weird being on the bench. I don't feel like it's my country. It's not my country. I want to play for Australia. And so I changed. And as soon as I changed, I got called up to the national team, and we qualified for the World Cup. So at the time, I was happy with my decision.
Yeah.
But I'm Australian. My family's Australian. My background's Australian. I grew up in Australia up until 15. So for me, I wanted to play for my country of birth.
So how does it work? Did you just ring the Australia manager and said, "Hey, I'm here now. I'm available"? How does that work?
That's what agents are for. You put it out on the paper. You get your agent to make a bit of fuss about you and call the right people. And well, as soon as I changed, I was playing the championship at Burnley, and we were sitting in the top six. It's the year we actually got promoted to the Prem, so I was actually in a really good place at that time. And I was in a lot of squads of I wasn't part, but I've seen a lot of the golden generation, as they call it, for the national team, and to the Vidukas, the Kules, the Kales, and I was part of that, and it was amazing to be a part of that at such a young age. And like you said, you look back now and you appreciate it more now than you do at the time. So that was the way forward for me.
I want to ask you quickly about Gareth Bale. How good was he?
Amazing, but also like you see how good of a player he is, but also what a great person, And I think that outweighs more about being a good person than a good footballer. I think you'll get a lot further in life if you're a good person, and he certainly was. And it was a pleasure to play alongside him. My son's actually got a Real Madrid shirt with Bale's name on the back, signed with my son's name on. So he signed it to my son, which is brilliant. So he had him on FIFA a few times. That's how he knows all of his players now, my son. So yeah, I think he appreciates that shirt.
It's actually good to hear about his personality, because you don't really hear that about him, do you? You always hear about his golfing talents and
the golf, yeah.
But to hear that he's a good person is actually good to hear, because he looks like it. But you just get these media that come out and hang shit on him, really. You say you don't know.
Exactly.
Don't have a clue.
Exactly. No, top gentleman, and I had the pleasure to play alongside him for Wales, and we got fairly close there. I haven't spoke to him for a good time, for plenty of years, but I'm just so pleased to see him doing well.
So your last cap for Australia was 2013, I think it was. I think you retired.
You tell me, man. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I looked at it. So and I found out that you actually retired in 2019. But then you said earlier this year that you would reconsider if you got called up again, or if there was interest.
I wouldn't say I retired. I pulled my name out unless they really needed me. I think I was in Saudi at the time. I was doing really well. I was probably playing some of my best football, and I was always on the verge of getting called up. Always on the standby list, and always just missing out. So I was 31 at the time, and I just thought, look, if it's not going to happen now, then I'll take my name out the hat, because that was all I was worried about. Every time the national team came out, I was thinking, am I in? And it was getting in my head a little bit. So I've got a young family as well, and the national team, it does take a lot of. You go away for a lot of time, and the breaks now are great for family times, and I just thought it was the right time. I mean, the boss at the time's got players that he likes ahead of me, and that's fine. Football's a game of opinions, and that's his opinion. So it's hard to change it, but I've never said I don't want to play. If he rang me tomorrow and said we need you, of course I'd go straight away. It's not something that I would have to think about either. I'd snap the hands off to go again. And the one thing about pulling my name out of the hat is my son never got to see me play for my country, which is something that I'll have to live with. But I'll have to back my own decision, and it might still come. There might be 12 injuries to centre halves, and you just don't know. So,
well, Big Harry's out. Big Harry's out now for a while. So
so there's one. So we've got 11 more.
Yeah.
To go.
Well, we can make it part of our mission to call on Graham Arnold to get Rhys back in the national team. How's that? Let's just
exactly. Right.
I think performances will dictate that as well. That's why I've came back. I want to get my name in the lights again, and out of sight, out of mind in Saudi, and to come back now, and we've had a fairly decent start, and myself, I've been okay. I've got a long way to go, but it's good to be. It's good that my family and friends can watch me again.
Just around the World Cup, missing out on the World Cup a couple of times due to injury. Mm-hmm. At the time, did you think, I'll get the next one, and then the next one happened, and the same thing happened. How did you feel? Cursed? Did you feel this is not going to happen for me, or what did you go through back then?
Well, I'm trying to break that curse because even at victory as well, like when it came to finals or big games, for some reason, out of my control, I just seem to miss them, and I don't know why. And it happens to me. It's happened to me a good few times where I always miss the big ones, whether my loan doesn't permit it. So we made the playoff final to go to the Prem at Wembley. My loan finished the day before the game, so it's stuff like that. So my loan finished. The victory one, I got injured. South Africa World Cup, I played on an injury the whole year. So I went over and I was struggling, and they gave me the chance to get over there and prove my fitness, and I couldn't. I broke down while I was in South Africa. I was only young at the time. I think I was 21 maybe. So it didn't hurt me as much. But like you said, you say, "Oh, I'll get the next one." Then the next one came, and in the January, I think it was January, I got injured because I was about to go to Swansea at the time. We'd agreed a deal and everything to go to Swansea. And my last game for the club, I ruptured my Achilles, and I thought I might be able to make it. I went to see, I had surgery straight away. He said, "Look, some players, a rugby player, got back in 3 months, so it's not impossible." So I went, "Brilliant, that's my target." And this was for the Brazil World Cup under Ange Postecoglou, and I was part of his leadership group, which I was really surprised with. When he came in, he had all the big names in, Mike Milligan, Tim Cahill, Lucas Neal was there at the time, and myself. And I thought he just got my name mixed up, I was there with the big boys. So that was a surprise. And I played his first game under him, started at centre back, which I didn't really play much for the national team until later on. So then Brazil came around, and I'd done my Achilles, and I tried to get back a bit too soon. I took my boot off, went on the exercise bike to get my legs moving. Went to stand up to adjust the seat on my feet, and I heard a little noise again. So it sort of went again. So that was a year injury. And that one, the Brazil one, probably hurt me the most. So then you move on to the next one. So the Russian one was a weird one because that was the year I was at victory. I got in team of the year. I had probably one of my most successful seasons ever. And for some unbeknown reason, I didn't even make a 50-man shortlist. So no one really knows about this except for my agent, really, and my family and friends. But I didn't even make the 50 because I was waiting for an email. With all due respect, I had a really good season, playing centre half, team of the season, played every single game except for the two at the end. But after, I was fine, I was fine. And then I didn't make the 50s. So that was a real kick in the teeth for me, and from then I just thought I was fighting a bit of a losing battle, So that one hurt, but probably not as much as Brazil.
Was there any explanation at all coming forward, or no? They didn't even let you know why you weren't in part of the 50?
No, like I said, football's about opinions, But the strange thing was at the time it was when Marwick took over. I think Marwick took that World Cup. So he didn't know anyone, and I got team of the year, so I don't know where he's got his information from. But honestly, I'd never hold a grudge. It's one of them where it's an opinion game. Whether he might have seen me and not liked me, I don't know, or whether he had someone watching me and didn't like me. Who knows? It's nothing that it's something that did hurt, but ultimately it's out of my control, and there's nothing I could do.
Yeah, I remember being, because my brother-in-law is a bit like Dimmy. He's a mad Victory fan, and I hear everything about Victory. And that year was all about how good you were, and you've got to make the national team and this and that. And it was a surprise. So I do recall it at the time. Yeah.
It was a strange one, for what it gave to the A-League that year and the season. We ended up winning as well, and you think, well, surely there's a bit of leeway, even if I wasn't even that good, just put me in because I won something, But it's just it is what it is, and like I keep saying, football is opinions, and you can't be everyone's cup of tea.
You'll have been watching Postecoglou at Celtic with a bit of interest, I guess. How do you think? Were you surprised he got that job? How do you think that's going to go for him?
I wasn't. His ability as a manager is unbelievable, but he was a bit unknown, and an Aussie to be in such a big job it seemed a bit far away, but we all knew what he can do. He done it with the national team. He done it with victory. He done it in Japan. He everywhere he's been successful. So there's no surprise that someone would take probably people would look at it as a punt, but if you know him, it's not a punt.
Mm.
And for the way that he's doing, and then the way he is, and the way he plays, and it's no surprise the accolades he's getting now, and the media attention, and everyone's starting to stand up and take notice, and it's brilliant for him, and he deserves everything because he's a great manager, a great person, and he's very successful, and I'm sure that Celtic fans love having him there. I'm sure the league does, and he's doing a good job, and he's only going to get better.
He developed the Raw Salona, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah,
He did.
I hear about that team living in Brisbane. Yeah, he's obviously very well thought of here.
Well, they're unbeaten in 31 or 32 games unbeaten. And the football that they played back then was completely foreign to what we're used to in the National League. I mean, there was great teams. Obviously, Victory had a great team, but we weren't playing that sort of football. The Barcelona-esque tiki-taka that he brought in and the intensity that he made Brisbane at was something to behold. And like Rhys said, for him to go now to Celtic and sort of start to implement that, they're starting to see, geez, this guy's got real progressive ideas, and he's taken the club somewhere. It's great to see.
Before we move on to you move back to Australia, Rhys, you've actually met one of us before. You might not remember this, you probably don't, but Bobby there has actually met you before. Tell your story, Bobby.
Yes, so
I'm interested in this.
Yeah,
where were we?
It's a good story considering how you were at Middlesbrough. So my best mate's a Borough fan. His dad's born and bred Middlesbrough man, and we did a football tour in 2011. And so the first game we went and saw was Middlesbrough v Millwall, and you were playing actually. Middlesbrough scored 2 goals in a 1-1 draw that day. He scored an own goal.
Was it?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, you scored an own goal, and I always remember it because you were the Aussie. I was actually enjoyed coming to watch because you and Scotty McDonald were there, so I was happy. And we actually met at the end of the game just before you guys were going to the car park out there.
Yeah.
And so we screamed out, and I think you and Scotty turned around and go, "Is that Aussies we're seeing?" And we walked over and said g'day, and me and my mate had introduced ourselves, and I think it was you or it was Scotty McDonald said, "What the fuck are you doing here? What are you doing watching the play?"
Wow, exactly. Wow, what a story. That's unbelievable.
And I said, "Oh, no, we're on a football tour, guys. We're going to watch you guys, and he's a Borough fan, and then we're going to Newcastle on Thursday." And both of you at the same time went, "Oh, yeah, go check out Newcastle. It's a Ripper City and Ripper Stadium." And my mate, he's like,
the pubs and bars are not bad around there either, are they?
Yeah, so I have met you before, and great to speak to a couple of Aussies playing in the Premier League or Championship.
It's weird how this has come all the way back around. Now I'm sat here talking to you on a podcast.
At our first podcast, I told that story. We didn't even think of having you on the podcast, and here you are. So.
Unbelievable. Jesus.
Football, small. We were saying before, it's a small kind of world, isn't it? You bump into people.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you know what I say to a lot of people? You can't burn bridges in football because you don't know who's when it's going to come back around and bite you in the ass. So that's what I'm trying to teach young kids now.
That was part 1 of our 2-part special with Rhys Williams. In part 2, we talked to Rhys about his current club, the Western Sydney Wanderers. We asked him about his hopes for the season, his time in Saudi Arabia, his days with Melbourne Victory, and we get his thoughts on football in Australia, as well as asking the question everyone wants to know the answer to. Just how did he cultivate such a magnificent beard? Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at ToonUnderPod, and keep an eye on our website, toonunder.com, for plenty more Newcastle United and Australia football content.